guys, it's Yuki here. Welcome to my channel if you're new. Konnichiwa. So, today's video is gonna be about how I am culturally half. I am Japanese and I was born in Canada. So let's start off with that. So in order to fully grasp what I'm trying to convey with my storytelling, we're gonna take it back to the 80s when my parents moved from Tokyo, Japan to this tiny little Okanagan Valley, British Columbia, Canada. Back in those days, things were quite a bit different for immigrants. There weren't any handouts like you see nowadays. When my parents moved here, they worked their ass off while they were trying to learn to speak and read English, a totally different language from Japanese, learn the Canadian customs and their culture and the rules, because let's face it, the two cultures are quite a bit different and they amalgamated. And I think that's a really important point to point out, because a lot of immigrants, not all, but a lot of immigrants nowadays, when they come to Canada, they expect Canada to revolve around their cultures and their language. And I don't think that's right when you're going into a foreign territory or a foreign country like that. But that's just my opinion. Anyways, back to my parents when they moved here. Shortly after, while they're trying to learn English and their cultures and working their butts off, I came into the picture. Alright, let's skip ahead to when I started either preschool and then like elementary school. And this was like during the early 90s, so just keep that in mind, times were a lot different. At school, I would try to, speak English. I did have to take ESL, that's English as a second language classes, for about a couple of years. And whenever I was at home, I would speak Japanese. And because I was so focused and preoccupied with learning to speak and write in English, I kind of skipped out on learning how to read and write in Japanese. So the elementary school I went to was predominantly white, and the town was predominantly white. There were hardly any Asians at the time. And as far as I can remember, I was the only Japanese kid there in school. Now I'm gonna talk about how my lack of English kind of affected making friends, to an extent. I had trouble hanging out with girls because, one, I didn't find anything interesting what they were doing. Well, it's the truth. I didn't care for gossiping, and they talked so much, and that involved me having to talk in English, and it was really tiresome. So I ended up hanging out with boys, like most of my life. And it was fun because they enjoyed things I enjoyed. I enjoyed sports, I enjoyed running around in the dirt, getting dirty and, getting grass stains, cuts, climbing trees, and riding my bicycle all over town. That was fun. They were more action-oriented. They didn't expect me to try and speak that much, and I just think it just went really well. I guess you could say I was a tomboy, let's face it. I got along with boys really well. They were so easy to hang out with. It was a lot of fun, and I learned English through them. Eventually my English got better, but let's face it, learning English from boys, you learn to cuss at a very young age, and I got really good at it. And while I was minding my own business and just hanging out with boys like I normally did when I was, going through elementary school, there was some girls that didn't like me for whatever reason. Not that I really cared, but it was just mildly irritating when they called me pancake face or flat face because I looked different from them. And discrimination happens to everyone. I want to make a point of that. It just so happened because I'm Japanese, so that's what they wanted to pick on. But I also know kids who got picked on for being poor or some stupid reason like that. And they can be Caucasian too. So just be aware, it's not just a race thing. There's always going to be discrimination no matter what, and it's up to you to stand up for yourself. Like with my guy friends that I hung out with, they didn't care that I sucked at speaking English. They just included me with everything they did. And I was really happy because I didn't have to prove to them of anything. But when these girls did call me names like flat face or pancake face, it really kind of definitely drove into my mind that I looked different and I was different and I didn't fit in. And that's where some of the complex started when I was younger, that, hey, I don't really enjoy looking different. I don't like being Japanese. And now that I'm thinking about it, it's so sad to, say that because it shouldn't happen, but everyone has their insecurities. And for me, that's what it was. I didn't like being Japanese back then. So middle school was pretty much the same. I'm still hanging out with a different group of boys this time, and I was really into football and playing bass guitar. That's what I was into. And I tried having a few female friends, and we always just went our separate ways. It was always easier to just hang out with boys because they didn't really need to talk much. And even if we did, it was more like jokes and teasing and lots of cussing. That's pretty much it. Lots of dirty jokes, lots of funny things, and that was a lot more easier than girl talk. I've always had trouble with that. Girl talk is not really my specialty. Never will be. And I don't know if it's because English is my second language that I had trouble talking with girls, but I think it's just my personality. It just did not click with girls. I didn't understand them, and I don't think I ever will. And that's okay. And that sounds kind of weird since I'm a girl too, but it's just how it is. And my English was pretty darn good by now. My accent was gone by middle school. So to sum up middle school, I was fluent in English. I could read and write almost better than most kids did at this point because I wanted to get good at it. So that's what I did. And I still felt like an outcast, even though I had friends and they never made me feel like I was a freak. I still felt like I was this, sore thumb that stuck out because I'm Japanese. And that was my own internal issues and conflicts that I had. And it's not something I expect people to understand. It's one of those things where you can only understand it unless you're that person. And I'm just trying to convey this story from my perspective. So towards the end of middle school, I was starting to get a lot of pent-up aggression due to this internal struggle of mine. And that's when I really clicked with punk rock. It talked about everything that meant something to me, like politics, social injustices, seeing outside the box and not conforming to social norms, just thinking for yourself and questioning things. And those things meant a lot to me because I always felt like an outcast, and this was something that I really connected with. So that attitude carried on into high school. So I'm still a tomboy, I'm still hanging out with boys, and that's where I met Ash, but that's a different story for another time. Anyway, so that's kind of the rebellious nature I started to pick up on because I didn't know how to express my turmoils and my conflicts that was going on inside my brain all the time. So I'm a teenager, I'm a POS, we all are, let's face it. And I thought school was this conformist BS and I did not want to go to it, so I started cutting class. And I didn't like doing it at the same time because I had Asian parents that I did not want to disappoint, and they were also strict, and I hated being a disappointment. Okay, when I say strict, I mean like Asian mama strict, okay? Canadian parents strict and Asian parents strict are on totally different levels. So because my parents were strict, I did not want to disappoint them. They didn't have to use physical, discipline to discipline me. Just the fact that I was disappointing them was enough to get me back in line. So my buddies, they're teenagers as well. They're cutting class and I'm cutting class. And because of that, my parents did not want me hanging out with them, which I totally understand. From their eyes, they saw my friends as bad influences, even though I was kind of choosing to do so myself. But we're teenagers. We think we know everything. We're just little POSs, right? And I know now that what they were doing was like doing the right thing in their view, because they didn't want me to go down a route where I regret things and I wouldn't be able to come back from certain regrets. And I'm so glad they put a stop to certain things that I would have gotten myself into. So that's what it's like having Asian parents. It's actually a good thing. I'm glad they were strict. Alright, on to the next thing. I still haven't accepted my Japanese culture at this point, and now that I'm becoming a woman at this area of life, this stage of life, beauty was something that was very foreign to me. what is beauty anyways? That's one thing I never really figured out when I was like a teenager. Does it mean you have to be white to be beautiful? Yeah, it kind of did actually. And it totally didn't help when some old hag would be like, hey, you're really pretty for an Asian girl. It's like, why don't you just shut the F up? Except I never said that because I was taught to respect my elders even though I thought they were a-holes. So I kept thinking I'll never be pretty enough unless I'm white. Yeah, good thinking, eh? Like any teenager, I had my insecurities. And my insecurity was that I look Japanese and I will never be as beautiful as a white woman. And that toxic thinking kind of led on until I was like 20. That's when things really changed. It was very radical. For once, my rebellious nature actually did something good. I had an epiphany. I did like a total 180 and suddenly it just clicked in my head that, hey, I am Japanese and I am also Canadian and I'm fine with it. You can only spend so much time disliking a part of yourself that you can never change, really. And I really embraced my Japanese culture. I was like, hey, this is part of me. I am just as much Canadian as I am Japanese. I took the positive things of both Japanese and Canadian cultures and left behind any extremist views, because extremist views are not healthy. It's all about balance. From the Canadian culture, it's good to be friendly, and it's good to be open-minded, and I like to give people the benefit of the doubt that a person's intentions are good, and if they're not, then they're just gonna be cut off from my life, and that's totally fine. But at the same time, I try to be understanding. Now, from the Japanese part of me, I do like to work smart, and respect is something that you earn from me, and trust is a very fragile thing. If it's broken, it's probably never gonna be built back up. And I do have strong boundaries and not taking BS. That's my Japanese side. And I think self-discipline is a good thing as long as you're not going too far into it. But I know a lot of Canadians lack the self-discipline. Remember that one episode from South Park? I think you guys should watch it. So the takeaway is, it's all about balance, finding that equilibrium. And I know it's really hard to do that. Even though I really regret turning my back on my Japanese culture, things happen for a reason, and if things didn't happen, I wouldn't be the person that I am today. So therefore, with all the BS that happened and the good, I'm grateful. So that's my story on being culturally half Japanese girl growing up in a predominantly white community. I'm a little bit whitewashed, and that's okay. It's all good. I'm not fully Japanese. I'm also not fully Canadian. At least, well, that's not true. My birth certificate says I'm Canadian, but you get what I mean. I'm right down the middle. So if you guys are still watching this, thanks to you guys for watching, and you guys are troopers, eh? And thanks for hearing out my story. And if you have any questions or comments, just write them down below. I am active on it, it's just no one likes to comment down there for some reason, which is totally fine, to each their own. But if you have any questions, comment down below and I'll try and get back to you. And thank you for watching. So until next time, take good care of yourselves and treat others the way you want to be treated. I'll catch you guys again next time. Bye.